You are watching the number one podcast in the whole entire YouTube wrestling community, and I'm one of your hosts, Juanzo.
And I'm your other host, Jean-Paul Leck.
And together we are Roll Break, and we're here, on a Tuesday, something that is unusual for us. But, it's Christmas week, like Jean-Paul said. So, we're going to be talking about, this is Broken Skull Sessions, Drew McIntyre. It's going to be a pretty cool video. And, this is another episode from all the series that we've done. I think we're the only podcast, Paul, that we've done every single episode. We did Kurt Angle, Mark Henry.
That just shows how crazy we are.
Yes, exactly.
That is so. Because we say we're the number one, and to be the number one in a podcast world like this, you got to be crazy.
You got to be crazy, and you got to be willing to do it all and to put everything on the line every single day, and that's what we do it because we love you. Thank you for the love, subscriptions. Thank you for the comments, and especially thank you for just giving us a place in your heart's family. So thank you so very much. We're going to be talking about, like we said, Drew McIntyre versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. Great interview, our reactions, and what we learned from the live of Drew. But before that, we always have something else in the menu. Before, just don't forget to check this guy that we're going to be talking about. Drew McIntyre is having some tensions with Sheamus, and they're supposed to be best friends. So, you did a review, Paul, so tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, but besides this, hopefully leading to a match at the Royal Rumble, and just what we saw with Randy Orton and Alexa Bliss on Monday Night Raw is just a waste. This show, all the reports said USA wants a more serious show. We definitely didn't get it last night.
I asked you that, and you said to me, he's like, just wait for the Royal Rumble. That's when it actually WWE hits the reset button, and then we'll hopefully think that we're going to get more enticing, more engaging storylines, more things that people our age are willing to watch rather than the kids stuff, the childish things that we watch all the time. So now let's talk about, Broken Skull Session, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Drew McIntyre. Your thoughts, overall, what do you think? It was, I think, good. I think that for me, I gained a lot of respect for Drew. So your take on it, so we can start dissecting.
Oh, yeah. I was definitely a big fan of Drew McIntyre before this, and this, even more so. Like you said, you learn about who he is, and, you just earn that respect from that, not just the professional respect and how much he loves his business and how professional he is in it, but also in his personal life, too. So this was really good, and to do somebody who's a current superstar, I feel like he was probably the best choice.
Yes, and that's what I want to mention on that. I think this is the first interview per se. Because remember the other ones, it was guys that were around Stone Cold Steve Austin's time, so it was more like a catching up. Hey, dude, how you doing? Remember when we did this? Or remember when you went through this? Oh, remember this stuff? Oh, when I told you this, I told you that. And these guys, Stone Cold and Drew McIntyre, I think they run each other, in the hall, in the venues.
Yeah, because one of the things he even said, he's like, "Oh, this is our first real conversation." Because our other conversation before this, I saw you, I introduced myself, and you pretty much were just like, "Oh, hey," and that was it. So he was pretty much saying Stone Cold kind of blew him off.
Yes,
because when he saw him, he was probably a nobody.
Yes, it's hey, dude, it's whatever. It didn't stick out, but now, he's the man, and actually, he happens to be a huge fan of Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's the first thing that we learned. See that picture right there? He had even the bed sheets and all of that. So every time that he was peeing his pants, he was peeing inside Stone Cold arms. This is a joke, but you can see how much of a fan he was of Stone Cold, and even being from Scotland. So that was a cool thing. Even Stone Cold is that humbles me. That's really moving. That touches me. So that was cool, right? How he was.
Oh yeah, and the one thing, like you said, he's such a big fan because he said the closest school was 12 hours away.
Yes.
So he was all of his friends were like, "Oh, I want to be a wrestler too." And then when they got older, they're like, "Yeah, no, that's kind of a bullshit thing. We don't really want to be that." But Drew said he always wanted to be that. And the 12 hours, he convinced his mom. I think he said him and another one of his friends went down. And he's like, it was harder than I thought, but he was going to stick with it.
Oh yeah,
and at the time too, he was always tall, obviously, but he was really skinny too. He wasn't this big muscular guy like we see now.
Oh yeah, exactly. And the one thing, like you said, going through all those processes, but then right away he started to wrestle, and then he finds this guy. That now there's a little dissension with the guy. I don't know what happened. And Jean Paul will say in the world of kayfabe, look at this great picture right there.
Yep.
The evolution of Sheamus and him, like right there. It's like me and Jean Paul in the days that we used to work, for some kind of company. That's where we met, and now the evolution of us right now. That's pretty legit, don't you think?
Exactly.
So like that's like how he meets, a guy that like is as passionate, as driven, as determined of like the way Drew was. And then they said, hey, you know what? We're gonna do this. It doesn't matter how much it takes us, how difficult it's gonna be. It doesn't matter. We're just gonna do it. The end goal is going to be you and me are going to become professional wrestlers, and that's how they they started to like go through, like you said, like the territories in Europe, especially like the United Kingdom and all of that. And also, like you said, that like he was mentioning that like every time he was in a company or like a promotion, he was always the main event. He said like he was put with the guys like Honky Tonk Man, like guys that like were like former WWE stars, and then he would wrestle them, and that was the really a good opportunity for him to catch knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah, so go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, it was just like that. I like that because he like Drew from the get go. He was put with like the main guys because everybody saw the potential. Even he says, I've always been the guy. I mean, in the back of his mind, he's like, I always was in the number one spot, so I never had to crawl my way up.
Yeah, but the good thing though, like that is true. But he always says, and he has that personality and that mindset. He's like, even though I'm number one, I always act like I'm number two.
Yes.
Like I'm fighting for that top spot. Like he's always hungry. He's never satisfied. And, that's one of the things where that's how he is now. But, when he was young, I don't think that's how he was. It sounds like it kind of all went to his head a little bit.
Yes. Well, like, and why? Because, like, he gets chosen, signed by the WWE. Remember how Laurinaitis goes to him, hey, I think I'm going to sign you. He goes, oh, I think I'm going to let you.
Yeah.
Like you see how
I love how Stone Cold popped for that. He's like, "No way, you son of a bitch." He's like, "That's badass." Like,
yeah, so that was really cool, and because like he was like, I think he got a name already established in the UK. So then also Sheamus, the two of them were signed. So you will see like the evolution of Sheamus and also like Drew. But this is the main moment. His first introduction to the WWE, kind of like a big audience because he did some dark matches with also like Scott Taylor. And that was one of like with William Regal. They had like the Great Britons, like they have a tag team on SmackDown during those years. And then Vince McMahon chooses Drew McIntyre, and as redundant as it sounds, he names him the chosen one. This guy is going to be a world champion in the near future. So I think that will put a lot of pressure on you because to hear it from McMahon like that and at that age. I think that was really good for Drew, but at the same time really bad because it put a lot of pressure on him.
Oh yeah, and then it's one of those things where he talks about that, and they go into like the rise because it's like Intercontinental Champ, all this stuff legit, and then the fall, and he talks about that and like all the demons that he had that he didn't really let out and stuff. When his mother was sick and everything, so he didn't. It was just it was a good, like we said, not a lot of people knew that about him, and like you really get into that side and you see like the that Drew is a human because you see him on TV and the guy's huge. You don't really see that side of him.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with you. Like we could see like this kind of like see two Drews right there. The one guy that is actually just the person is just like we said the normal guy. Not like like the Night Roman Reigns, that kind of guy, but like we just see the person, a human being, and now we see the Drew, like the larger than life character, the person that just delivers the Claymore kick and then just kicks ass and beats everybody up. But I like that, and like you said, the rise continues. He had a lot of future. He is actually pitched to have a match with The Undertaker. At least as he was told. The plan was like for him to actually fight The Undertaker at WrestleMania 26. So that was like another great moment because he said that like The Undertaker was his mentor. He said that he always went to The Undertaker for advice, for knowledge. How do I react to certain things? How am I supposed to behave? So Taker was a instrumental part for Drew. So, like, that would have been a great match. I think, maybe.
But then he said, like, the match with Shawn, that was the better match. He said he probably wasn't ready just because, like he said, where he was mentally and everything. So, I mean, it would have been, we saw a little bit of a tease, a little bit of something at TLC, our Extreme Rules, rather, a couple years back. But, a match between them would have been legit, I think.
Oh, it would have been great, like you said, but like Drew wasn't ready for that spot, and also like that year he ends up like working like the Money in the Bank. That Money in the Bank, for the ones that remember, when that was not won by Drew, was won by like a guy that like we get to see on AEW every single like Wednesday, and that's Jake Hager, or at that time Jack Swagger. and he cashed in 2 weeks later to Jericho. So like you see how like that all played out, and then the Rise gets to the peak, Future Shock DDT. Guy's great, he's actually main event spots, Intercontinental Champion, like you said, but then something really bad, like you said, the mom is sick, he gets a little bit into the alcohol, kind of like the price of fame, and then this comes up, Paul. 3MB. So, I mean, like, these three guys, if you think the way that it turned out for them, I think all of them did pretty well for themselves, but at that time, you saw them as losers. So, unfortunately, at that time, there were three losers, and the fact that Drew was put in that spot, it kind of hurt. I think fans of him, like we were, and also like for him itself, is like, hey, you go from like being like the future to just being like a funny act. You're just gonna play the crowd.
Yeah, and he's like, they gave Heath this group because, like, what he was doing, putting over all the legends, and then he's like, we made the best of it, and, he was going to do whatever they gave him because that's just who he is, but personally, he's like, no, I did feel like this was kind of like a slap in the face, a step down, this wasn't where I was meant to be, but like you said, he made the best of it, and he had two legit friends out of it, so,
exactly.
there was some good out of it.
And let's talk about Jinder, at least WWE champion. Yeah. WWE champion, and Heath, at least he's a great act right now in Impact. Great with Rhino, at least tag champion. He was tag champion for a few times, and nobody gives a shit about his kids. It's still, but Heath, at least his character was always great. Heath has always been unappreciated, and we love him. We hope that like Impact also like makes him actually look how he deserves. Portrays him how he needs to be. But then Drew gets released. Really, boom, you had to hear reality, rock bottom, and then he says, well, I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm just going to try to improve myself. I got to go, like you said, reinvent myself and really be the wrestler that I was supposed to be. So for me to come back, it's like, I'm not ready. This Drew doesn't belong in the WWE, but the new Drew will. So like he goes back to the UK, and he cuts a great promo in one of those promotions in
I think it was ICW.
Yes,
I believe.
Yes, he comes out, he cuts a great promo right there. He's like, I'm back, and he said, I was the guy, the former WWE Intercontinental Champion. Vince McMahon, the man himself, the old man, said I'm supposed to be the chosen one. So that's how like the Rise starts back again.
And don't you love how when he came in the ring, he had the jeans on, the hoodie, the hood up. He looked like Wolverine or something, beating guys up in a bar. He just beat the shit out of everybody in the ring. Cut this promo, and I love how he said, if you watch it from the start, I guess probably when he was beating these dudes up till the everything's over, it was like a 22-minute segment where he was the star and he was just saying what he want. The crowd was loving it because he was like, man, are they even gonna give a shit? Is anybody gonna care? But no, they loved it, and he was like, this was it. And then boom, he was like main event again everywhere. Everybody was working with him. He was working everywhere, and he even said in his mind he wanted to go to Japan.
Oh yes, yeah. He wanted to go to Japan because they feel like you always said like I know you have a great respect for Japan. You're a big fan. Mm-hmm. It's like like that's like the stiff like part of the business. That's like legit. That's more real than any other place in the world.
And also for him to go there for how he looks, he easily would have been probably IWGP Heavyweight Champion, and that would have been something on his belt. Okay, I was WWE champ. Was IWGP, I mean, he wasn't WWE champ then, but, he could have added us to his record. TNA champ, New Japan champ, all these heavyweight championships, who doesn't want that on their record?
Exactly, and, and you mentioned TNA right there. That's the only part that, of course, WWE is never going to talk about when it comes to, like, Broken Skull Sessions or any other interview, but he was an Impact champion. He beat EC3 for the belt. So like you saw, and you remember, we got matches with Bobby Lashley that we covered when we talk about Impact.
Yes.
Drew reinvented himself, going through, like you said, like your mentality, the old school, going to territories, winning belts, like gaining recognition from people, like reinventing himself. Like he even said, like he used social media a lot for that, and he said at some point he had 7 belts. So you saw how good the guy was, and that's when like WWE finally turns around, right?
Yeah, because they swooped in right before he went to Japan.
Yes,
and then NXT, because WWE called him, and I guess they offered him main roster right away. They made it sound, but he said no. He said I'm signing if I'm going to NXT first. He wanted to go to NXT, and he went there, and it was a legit run.
Yeah, like right there, you guys can see with the NXT Championship, he beat the glorious Bobby Roode, the legit Bobby Roode. He didn't beat the guy that like loses to the Street Profits on Friday nights. Not exactly. That guy, but legit Bobby Roode. And also, like you said, like he wanted to gain the knowledge from Shawn. He wanted to gain like how is the WWE weighing right now? How are like the audiences? How you portray your character? And they gave him a really great run. And also remember this, Paul, when Drew McIntyre wins the championship, the Undisputed Era debuted. Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, and also Kyle O'Reilly, they debuted that same night. So like you see like how like even thanks to Drew, we got like the best like staple in the last 5-6 years in the WWE, the Undisputed Era. And then his run comes a little short though, because like in this match with Drew McIntyre and of course Andrade Cien Almas for the NXT Championship, he got injured. He got injured. Remember that? Almas wins the championship. He was sidelined for like 6 months or so. Then he comes back to Monday Night Raw with Dolph Ziggler, and then the fear. Are they going to remember who I am and all of that? Boom. People still remember, delivers the Claymore, everybody's excited. And we always said, you and me, everybody that we used to talk about wrestling before the days of Pro Break, we said, this guy needs to be main event. He looks great, the physique is right there, character's there. Why can he not have a champion?
And see, the thing is now hindsight's 2020. At the time, we're like, Vince is wasting him. Vince is bullshit. He loses to Roman at WrestleMania, which Stone Cold, I love when he has the picture. Boom, of him and Roman at WrestleMania 35. Or not 35, sorry, WrestleMania, what was it, 33?
35. No, you're right.
35, and then him and Roman at this past year's this year's Survivor Series.
Yes.
And,
Stone Cold doesn't have it only. Yeah, we have it too.
We have it. Yeah, there. And then he's like, look at the eyes, look at the stare down. So Vince knew at the time Drew wasn't ready for the main event, but he was on his way. He's like, hey, let's like we always say, let's cook it, let's put it in the incubator, let's get it nice and hot, let's get it ready. Because if you would have put the belt on Drew right away, let's say the first month he debuted on Raw, it wouldn't have been this legit, it wouldn't have felt this legit. So it was good that they waited, and he really got to connect with the fans, because he even said, even before COVID, he would he would cut his own little personal promos on the mic. He would be goofy or be whatever, try to connect to the fans, not be funny and take the business not seriously, but he's like, anything to connect to the fans to get them to like you, because when they like you, they cheer for you. When they cheer for you, everybody sees that.
Absolutely, and that's what they did. That's what the main part. The Stone Cold was like really praising Drew McIntyre for everything he said, like you mentioned. And like the Royal Rumble finally hits, and you remember how much we pop when he did the Claymore on Brock Lesnar.
Thanks to Ricochet.
Thanks to Ricochet, and nobody gives credit to Ricochet.
Nope, poor Prince Puma.
That was, and also he mentioned in one interview, not this interview, but Drew said, I want to fight Prince Puma, because, they know themselves from the indies, they created great stuff together, but this takes us to this point, look at that picture, how can this look any better? Two stallions right there, and they're not Matt Riddle, but see, like, Drew, did you love the part that says, in order for me to fight Brock Lesnar, I needed to look like Brock Lesnar. I needed to sound like Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, and Stone Cold even said, he's like, you know what? He's like, when I look at this picture, he's like, there's not many people on this planet that make Brock Lesnar look, I don't think he said small, but he's like, they don't make Brock Lesnar look as big. And he's like, because Drew looks, if you look at this picture here, Lesnar looks like he's almost out of shape compared to Drew.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You see a little bit of the, like the fat in the belly. Boob-wise, they're the same. They're like Triple D, I think it is.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but you see the.
At least they're not Triple XL. At least they're not, or AC Romero.
Larry, no, not that. But you see how great it looked. And the whole rivalry, that it was really great.
And like he said, this match, imagine this in front of people, and he's like, it wasn't even Thunderdome, because at least Thunderdome, they had the pyro, they do entrances. At WrestleMania, they came out, it was like nothing.
Yes,
it was like bare bones. It was just okay. You walk down the ramp, and Stone Cold really praised that when he won, that he reached towards the camera. To the fans, because it was like, that's how he connects to the fans, because they weren't there to celebrate, they weren't there to pop, to scream, to join him in that moment, but he knew they were all watching. Probably more people were streaming and watching than ever before, which is probably true. And he's like, I wanted to reach out and be with the fans, and Stone Cold put him over for that, and it was legit.
Oh yeah, man, he broke the fourth wall, like you said, because he's reached out.
The fourth wall or the floor wall?
Yeah, the fourth wall. Yeah. Like reminiscence for me. Yeah, thank you for that. And he is able to, at least he said, the one thing that I also we learned from this interview is he says, I do things my way. I like to try different things. I like to see if this works, if this doesn't work. And if somebody says in the one I go to Gorilla and they say, hey, maybe don't do that, is all I can say is sorry. And I don't do it again, but I have to try new things to connect. And you were right. And remember this when we used to cover Monday Night Raw and all of that. He was the only guy that will actually acknowledge Charlie. Remember, everybody will just be right to promo, but like Drew will be like, "Hey, Charlie, what's up?" How
Yeah,
you
exactly.
doing?
Yeah, because when he said, I don't want. Well, this is skipping ahead a little bit, but that's fine. When he talks about Randy Orton, he calls Randy Orton the Joker, and he's like, I didn't want to be Superman because Superman's an alien. He's made of steel. He's perfect. He's like, people can't relate to Superman, but people can relate to Batman because he's a human. He has flaws. He has emotions. He has demons that haunt him. He's like, everybody has that. So he's like, I'm Batman, and I needed my Joker. So that was Randy Orton. So like you said, Drew is a human being. That's how this connects to. He wants to be portrayed as a human. He's gonna be like, oh, hi, Charlie, because then us at home, like we thought it. Probably other people thought it, like, oh wow, he actually talks to her like a human being. This guy's not like a robot, not like Charlotte Flair, who's like, hello.
Yeah, or like, hello, I still bit your ass.
Exactly.
That was a cool shot. Going to Monday Night Raw review, but that was a cool shot that Nia Jax did. And now let's talk about, he's the champion. He got a great moment. Like the first rivalries were okay. Seth Rollins was pretty good, at Money in the Bank. That was cool. Then he got Dolph Ziggler, whatever. And then Bobby.
At least there was history with Ziggler, so I'm like, okay, legit.
Yeah, but this comes up. Randy Orton and him. We said like this rivalry was really, really good. Especially even he acknowledged. So you see how much understanding of the business he has, and of course, he's been in the business for 19 years. So he says Randy was the guy after Edge. After the greatest match of all time. Remember when we talk about every single thing we talk about is in the reviews, is in the channel. So please take a look at it. Edge and Randy Orton, the greatest match ever. So now he said, I need Randy. And they had a pretty great rivalry. I really enjoyed it.
And he even said, like, at the time, it was so long ago, especially for us, we watched so much wrestling, but Ric Flair was with Randy Orton for part of this rivalry until I believe it was a Clash of Champions. And he turned on Rick before that. If my memory serves me correctly. But it was a really good promo that Drew cut against him, because Drew said, like, even some of his promos, he's like, they tell you, okay, make sure you get this point across. He's like, but I just went off on Randy, and he's like, as I'm cutting this promo, I'm talking, and I'm like, shit, what was the point I was even supposed to make? Because, you just get so passionate in this promo. But, see, that's the good thing. Like, that's when these promos are good. When you're just speaking from the heart, and you're not speaking from a script. Somebody was like, oh, make sure you say all this.
Yes, no, and the best thing is like when going along, he said remember what he's talking about is when I got fired, you never helped me. I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you to say something, maybe something that will comfort me, something that it will give me more, light a fire on me, so I will come back.
And there was kind of a shoot. I don't know if you picked it up, because he was like, I'm not saying that this. He's like, in real, because Stone Cold is like, was this really? See, that's why I like how Stone Cold tries to shoot a little bit. He's like, well, was this really Randy Orton?
Let's see,
he's like, for a shoot, was this Randy? And he's like, no, it wasn't Randy per se, but there were people in the locker room who knew something was wrong. They could have said something and help me out, and they didn't. So he kind of put some people out there. So I wonder who that could have been.
Oh yeah, it's true. But it's because this guy had the potential in the world. Everybody remember, when you have that title in you, remember that was the chosen one. Even in the Titantron, when the music with Broken Dreams used to come up, they will say the chosen.
And you know what? I'm sure that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
Oh yeah, well of course it is, especially first Scottish man to ever been hired for the WWE. We can see right there once again. The first Scottish guy, and first Scottish champion, WWE champion right now. But back then, you think that people wanted to see that? Hell no. And especially this guy, 19, 20 years old. What do you think to the guy that is 25, 28? Hey, you suck. This guy's the future. Whatever.
Or even guys that are old. Guys that that have been there for a long time, that are in their 40s. These old timers that are like, what the hell?
Yeah, but we're talking about you, Drew. You're good. Hey, that's why he's happy. So all of these things, takes us once again to Randy Orton. This rivalry was absolutely great. The whole story was good. And he gains the WWE Championship again. They talk about that. How is that feel? The WWE Championship was right there. And I love how Stone Cold says it because of the promos that you cut. Remember when he was wearing all black and he had the title right by his shoulder, and he says, Randy, I'm going to stay champion at that time, or I want to win the championship again. All these promos that he had. Stone Cold says, you made the title relevant again. You made the title meaningful again. The title, it depends, and they always say this, is either who carries it, or or the title gives to the person, or sometimes the person gives.
Well, that's why in the Attitude Era, in Stone Cold's era, it bounced between him, The Rock, Triple H, The Undertaker, Mankind in there a couple times. Kane sprinkle him in. It was always on legit guys who people cared about, and when they spoke, it meant something.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, they didn't come out here saying bullshit, or they weren't like, Jinder Mahal, like you had mentioned previously. No offense to Jinder, but like, if you don't portray these champions legit, people aren't going to care about them.
If you don't
And,
want to talk about,
Braun Strowman is another one. And even the way they booked the Fiend when he was champion for a week, the second time. So, but now Drew portrays it legit. Like he said, that I love that promo. He had the belt on his shoulder. He's like, people ask me, why am I dressed in all black? Am I going to a funeral? And he's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I am. And it's like, that, because he's like, somebody's going to die in this ring. It's either me or it's Randy.
Yeah.
So, that's what I mean. That's how you portray it legit.
And then that's why Stone Cold said, you sold me on the match. You didn't shit on the guy, because I'm interested in both guys and I want to see the match. And that's what we always said, you got to sell the match, not say yourself. You got to sell the match. Why? Because people tune in to see the match. Sometimes like we want to see, for example, we will say, remember like Johnny Gargano, Adam Cole. We wanted to see them fighting. We wanted to see them beating each other. Right now with Karrion Kross, we wanted to see with Damian Priest. We want to see what? The match. We don't want to see, Karrion beating like Damian Priest's ass. No, we want to see the match. And that's what Drew is doing. He's like, trying to improve the ways that like the WWE is creating the stories, delivering the stories. So like Drew is like really, his understanding of the business is absolutely.
Yeah, he has that. He's trying to bring the old school to the new school. He's trying to be like, we can still be fun, we can still connect to the audience, still be big presence on social media, do a lot for the community, but we can also be wrestlers on a wrestling program.
Oh yeah, and I like that, and also you saw he had the thing with Matthew McConaughey. He does a little bit of like he has the Q&A, so he actually goes outside of like the wrestler and all of that, and he has like a little bit of interviews, and of course like they do what we do, they bring it back to the wrestling. They get other people, hey, tell me a little bit about like the wrestling, your wrestling experiences. So Drew is doing a great job, and after this interview, you kind of understand why he's the guy. Everything that he's done for this 19 years had made him the guy. And I think he's really elevating the product when it comes to him. Because, like the whole Monday Night Raw, you cover it, so it's like 3 hours. This guy cannot save the 3 hours.
No, but like I say, he always makes, and to go off that, they had that holiday street fight, with the candy canes, the eggnogs, all the bullshit. And that one that Drew was a part of and everyone else, they made it as legit as, but that was probably the best one I've ever seen, because it's like I said, it wasn't the New Day who all comes out dressed as Santa Claus throwing pancakes, and they came out and they just had a legit 6-man tag. But it's because they, even though they're putting gimmick bullshit, they're like, no, we're main event, we're legit, we're going to treat this business legit.
Oh yeah, and and that's what we're gonna talk about a little bit. Like, like you said, the teases of like the Royal Rumble. This could be, these two guys. This rivalry has a lot of potential for Drew and Sheamus. Sheamus is also like WWE champion, World Heavyweight champion, IC champion, United States champion. Because he's got every single thing of the goal, and it's gonna be a great match. But like then the origin of the sword came out. Like they said finally, why you when he come out like that is really great. But I think, at least for me, and I've said this to you, they're overdoing it. He should do that.
Yes, definitely.
You even said it, like, do it for pay-per-view. Not every single thing, come with the skirt.
Or just championship matches.
Yeah,
every time it's a championship match, whether the belt, the belt's on the line, whether it's on Raw or pay-per-view, whatever.
Yes, but like, don't know about like, see who actually owns the sword.
Yeah, but I thought it was actually his maybe family sword, or maybe it was a gift or something. No, he said it was Vince McMahon's. Yeah, they go in the office, and Vince wanted him to wear it to the ring, and he's like, I can't step through the ropes with this on my back. Do you see how big it is? And he's like, Vince is just waving it around in his office, swinging this huge sword, and I guess he grabs it, turns it, and kind of like, sticks it down, and he's like, oh my God, like, or I forget if he said Vince did that or if Drew did it, but he's like, one of them saw the other one do it, and they were like, oh my God, like, that's what we'll do, and he's like, then we just stuck it in the ground on the ramp, flames come out, boom, and it's, badass.
Yeah, and like you said, in the whole entrance from Drew, it's just Vince's and Drew's idea. It's both of them coming together. I love the line that, like, when Vince, after Drew, debuted on Monday Night Raw in 2018 with Dolph Ziggler, he came to Gorilla, and Vince says, hug him and said, welcome home. It's like, and a lot of wrestlers have that moment with Vince. It's like, maybe when you first started here, you were not ready to be with the person, who I'm thinking you could be. But now when you come back and you do your work, you get better, you improve in everything.
Vince is like a broken clock. He's right twice a day.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, he like twice, he'll give you these legit moments, and you're like, all right, Vince knows what he's doing. And then every other time you're like, what the hell is he doing?
Yes, no, you're right. You're right. Like, and the old man has the eye. We gotta say, and we gotta admit, despite how much people shit on the guy, despite how much we get upset at him, but at least in many instances, he's been right. And with Drew, absolutely, who could not say that Drew McIntyre right now is absolutely great? I will say,
Mm-hmm.
Stone Cold, of course, it has to be political. Oh yeah, Roman is a great job on the other side. No, 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 no. Oh yeah, I was gonna be like, no, Stone Cold. Of course, you gotta like play, like devil's advocate and be good with both guys. Drew McIntyre to me is like the face of the company, and he's represented at least.
What was the one thing where he's like, I forget what Stone Cold said about Drew, and he's just like, "Oh, well, I'll tell Vince that." Like, oh no, he's like, "You should be the champ forever" or some kind of shit like that. I'll tell Vince if he ever wants to take the belt off me. That Stone Cold said no. And he's like, "Don't tell him that, god damn it." He's like, "Don't tell him I said that shit." And, they're laughing. It's good. That's like what a Drew. The way he connects even with Stone Cold, he said this is their first conversation. Really, I'm sure they talked before the sit down. It wasn't like, oh hey, they don't even introduce themselves. Oh boom, sit down, do an interview. No, I'm sure they talked a little bit beforehand, but he had Stone Cold laughing. It was almost like they were, we're old friends, like him and the Undertaker, him, Kurt Angle, whoever. But Drew can connect to people that easily. So with with having to connect to people very easily, especially not even in person, I think Drew was the perfect champion for this COVID era. Like to ask you who, because I don't see somebody like AJ or Seth Rollins or even Kofi Kingston, as great as they are, and Kofi has a big presence on social media. I don't see them really connecting to the fans like Drew McIntyre.
Oh yeah, no, and I agree with everything they said, and I will add something. You and me, every single wrestling fan wanted Drew to have that big moment. He wanted, like, we all were rooting for him. And when
remember the rumors when they thought COVID was just going to be like indies, they didn't think COVID was going to be like WrestleMania main event like Hogan and Andre. They didn't think it was going to be that big, but they were like, oh, we'll have Lesnar beat Drew at Mania, and then we'll just do a rematch at SummerSlam where there's crowd.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, that's what it is. I'm glad they didn't, because, they could have obviously been like, oh, well, COVID's just running wild. It's like Bruno Sammartino, 1,400-day champ, here we go. But they could have just gave it to him whenever, but I'm glad they gave it to him at WrestleMania.
Oh, yeah. And absolutely, I think that's the perfect way to say it. I think that's why Drew is, like, so crucial right now for the WWE. And, to conclude with this, like, he said, like, hey, you have any goals in, it's just being a wrestler. I want to wrestle as I want to be as old as like the Undertaker. I want to have that kind of longevity. I don't need to go to Hollywood. I don't need to be an actor. I don't need to do any side projects. I just want to be a wrestler. So whenever they have me, I just want to wrestle and I want to kick people's asses. And I like how his wife, he said, hey, my wife is not a wrestling person, but like she gives me that insight from a non-wrestling person. So I like that. So for me, Paul, let me your thoughts on like Drew McIntyre, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
This is great. If they would this is one where I don't know if you could do a part 2, but if they would do a part 2, I would definitely wouldn't mind watching it. I wouldn't be like, oh, hell, like, what is this bullshit? But no, Drew McIntyre, like I said, I was already a big fan of his. He's probably going to be, spoiler alert, my, male superstar of the year for the Rope Break Awards. There's the spoilers for the dirt sheets. They can write that down. But, this just made me like Drew even more. I love these Broken Skull sessions. I love when I always see the ad, coming this Sunday. I love watching them. I can't wait to see the next one.
Yeah, Stone Cold, like you said, he's really great. He's getting really better at this. And, this one, like I said, for me, is the first interview because he didn't know the guy. So like I really love.
Yeah, because that's the one thing when Stone Cold interviews, he sometimes kind of takes over. He'll tell like a story. Oh yeah, when I was champ, blah blah blah, and then like the Undertaker's like, so
yeah.
But this he asked all the questions because he didn't know anything.
Yeah, Drew was like, oh, okay, I didn't know that because, like you said, Stone Cold is like, well, let me give you my take on what happened and all of that. But you're right. So, family, thank you so very much. I hope that you guys learn a little bit more about Drew McIntyre, and we actually entice you to like go and watch this interview. It's an hour and a half. It's like I don't think it's like a lot of time. Hey, maybe after Christmas dinner or something after you're done wrapping the presents. go check that out. That's a gift for you guys. Watch this. So, Paul, where they can find us in the social media world?
Yeah, and if you want to give us a gift, you can follow us on Rope Break on Facebook, the OG Rope Break on Twitter, the original Rope Break on Instagram, and of course right here on YouTube, home of the #1 podcast, the YouTube wrestling community, the original Rope Break.
Like you said, Paul, we are the gift that keeps on giving. So please, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Tomorrow we're going to be all over the place. We have AEW Dynamite, we have NXT, we have actually soccer. So it's going to be absolutely crazy. We're always crazy right here on Rope Break. So family, thank you so very much. Paul, you and me have one more thing that is left to say.